By this point, some of you might be wondering if, after you've drawn a shape, if you're pretty much stuck with the look and feel of that shape, or if you can modify it after the fact, or if you would have to delete it and start all over again. Luckily, after you've drawn a shape, you can always modify that shape later. You can, as I showed you previously, always use the Sub-Select tool to select the actual vector points, the vector shape of that shape, and modify it manually that way. Now, if you just wanted to squash or stretch it or actually scale it up or down, there is a tool specifically for that purpose. It's called the Free Transform tool. Let me just give you a brief overview of the Free Transform tool and a couple of the keyboard shortcuts that you can use along with this tool to actually help you resize and squash and squish your shapes. First, we obviously need a shape to use the Free Transform tool with, so I'm going to select the oval tool. And I'm going to hold down my Shift key and click and drag out a circle on my stage. Then I'm going to select my Selection tool, the arrow tool, and I'm going to double click on the fill of my shape. Again, double clicking selects the fill and the stroke around the outside. If I just click once, it'll only select the fill. So I'm going to double click to select the whole thing. Then I'm going to select the Free Transform tool. As soon as I select that, you'll see these small corner handles as well as handles on the side that appear. Now, clicking on any of these side or corner handles will allow me to modify the shape of this particular shape. Now, if I hold down my Shift key and click and drag on one of these corner handles, I can scale my shape up or down. Holding the Shift key makes sure that when I scale it, it scales it proportionally. It's not going to squish or stretch it. On the other hand, if I don't hold down my Shift key and I click on drag in one of those corner handles, I can scale it up or down, but while I'm doing it, I can also squash or stretch it. Again, holding down the Shift key prevents that from happening, so as I click and drag it around, I can make sure and I know that I'm scaling it proportionally. Clicking on one of the side handles back and forth, I can also squish it or stretch it. Now you notice that as you click and drag on one of the side or corner handles, that it keeps the bottom left as the anchor point of this shape. So as I squish it or as I stretch it, the bottom left pretty much stays in the same position. This also holds true for the corner side. It stays in the same position pretty much the whole time. That is the anchor point. However, if you want the shape to resize from the center point, if you hold down your Alt or Option key on the Macintosh while you're clicking and dragging on either a side or corner handle, it's going to resize it from the center. So as I click and drag, it'll keep the center point as the anchor point instead of the bottom left point. So that's a really good keyboard shortcut to keep in mind as you're working with the Free Transform tool. The other thing I'd like to show you is besides the side and corner handles, if you move your mouse cursor in between those 2 points, in between the side and the corner, you'll notice that you get a little down, upward facing arrow. If you click and drag, when you see that icon, it's going to allow you to skew your shape. You can do this on the side or on the top. So by doing this, you can skew your shape back and forth. So the Free Transform tool, really, as the name implies, allows you to freely transform the shape however you like. You can, by clicking on the side or corner handles, squish, squash, or resize your shape very easily. And then by moving your mouse in between those corner and side handles, you can also skew your shape any way you'd like. You really have a lot of control after you've drawn a shape by using the Free Transform tool to modify the shape after the fact. You'll also notice when you have the Free Transform tool selected that down at the very bottom of the toolbox there's a few different buttons that you can select. You can choose Scale, Rotate and Skew, or Distort, which you've pretty much already seen here by using the Free Transform tool and clicking and dragging on different portions of this shape, either between the side and corner handles or the corner handles themselves. But there's also this one called the Envelope. If you click on that button, you'll see that now you have a lot more different points that you can click and drag on around the outside of your shape. By clicking and dragging on one of those little handles, you can actually modify, much like clay, the outside portion of your shape. So you can click and bend and drag on these points to modify the actual vector shape. Now again, because Flash draws as a vector shape instead of bitmaps, and again, if you don't know exactly what I'm talking about with bitmaps and vectors, you probably want to go back and watch a movie earlier on in the CD-ROM called Bitmaps versus Vectors. But because Flash draws with vector shapes, you can easily resize and modify and distort a shape without any loss in quality. So by clicking and dragging these different points around, you can easily modify the actual shape of your object. So as you can see, the free transform tool, coupled with the different options that it gives you down here, really give you a lot of control over modifying the shape of your objects after you've drawn them.